Right now, we're aiming to try to shoot for about 30 minutes today. If we don't get to all of your questions, the corporate communications team at Evergy will follow up with you later with any remaining answers. So with that, I am going to go ahead and turn things over to Chuck Casely. He is the Senior Vice President of Marketing and Public Affairs and Chief Customer Officer for Evergy. Chuck, go ahead.
Thank you, Gina. Really appreciate it. And members of the media, thanks for attending today. This is our third press conference today, and really appreciate everybody attending and participating. You've been an incredible source of help to get information about what's going on out. So I'm going to jump right into it. This morning, as I think everybody is aware, the Southwest Power Pool declared an energy emergency alert level 3. This is the second time in their history they have done that. And around 7 a.m. this morning, they requested that we reduce demand for electricity within Evergy's service territory. And so what that means is for the second day, we instituted around 7 o'clock this morning, temporary emergency power outages to reduce that demand. Total number of impacted customers today is about 270,000 customers out of the 1.7 million customers that we serve, or about 16%. It's important to note that that is not a number that were impacted all at the same time, but that's from 7 o'clock this morning till about 10:15 when the Southwest Power Pool called off the load reductions and allowed us to try and get back to closer to normal operations. Right now, we have less than 5,000 customers that remain out. Many of these are not from temporary emergency power outages, but rather from other conditions on the system. Again, some are a holdover from those temporary power reductions this morning. I want to make it very clear that at no time during the last 48 hours has Evergy not had enough energy or enough generation, enough power supply to meet the demand of our customers. It's important to remember that the Southwest Power Pool is the controlling authority for a 17-state region, of which Evergy is just one of the utilities serving customers in that 17-state region. And they have whenever they have a situation that could impact grid stability, as occurred today, we get called on to do our part and to reduce load in order to make sure that the grid as a whole remains stable. Southwest Power Pool serves from our border with Canada all the way down to the Panhandle in Texas. And again, that's a 17-state region. As we came into the morning hours this morning, we really had two things that were impacting the Southwest Power Pool. The first was overall supply. The reserve margin had gotten very low, meaning that there was barely enough supply to meet the demand of customers in that 17-state region. And that is one reason that we were asked to reduce power this morning. The second reason is the Southwest Power Pool was experiencing transmission congestion in multiple areas of their service territory or their 17-state region. For those of you who weren't on an earlier press conference, our transmission system is a little bit like the interstate or highway system in the United States. It's used to move bulk energy over a long distance from where it's generated to population centers, and also to tie the grid together. And so whenever we have congestion on the transmission system, that's like a significant traffic jam. And in order to create less of a traffic jam, sometimes we also have to reduce power in certain areas. Again, the number one goal in everything we have done today and over the last 48 hours has been to ensure grid stability and to avoid a much longer, much larger, and uncontrolled outage where people could be out for half a day, overnight, multiple days, as we are seeing millions of customers experience in other areas of the country outside of the Southwest Power Pool. Again, that is the number one goal. This morning when we came to you and we had a press conference at 8:30, we were talking about the fact that we still had a goal to keep outages as short as possible, with the goal being between 30 and 90 minutes. As it turns out, though, the Southwest Power Pool requested we reduce about 5 times the load today, or 5 times the demand within our service territory as they did yesterday. And they also requested that we keep that demand reduced for about 3+ times, again, what we had to do yesterday. As a result, many of the outage times that customers experienced today were a little longer than what we intended, of 30 to 90 minutes. But many customers experienced an outage of 2 to 3 hours. Now, some customers significantly less, and some customers obviously experienced a little bit longer. Again, the whole point here is to maintain grid stability and to make sure we avoid much bigger, much longer, and prolonged outages. The last 48 hours and really the last week have shown us truly unprecedented temperatures for an extended period of time. And that means whenever we have outages, whether they are planned emergency outages or whether they are ones that come up because of some kind of failure or issue on our system, we immediately get significant amounts of traffic to our call centers and to our website. Today we experienced, and we were able to count up to 6 times the highest number of calls to our call center and website that we have seen in our company's history. Truly an unprecedented amount of calls and an unprecedented amount of traffic to our website. As a result, we know that for a couple of hours, several hours today, communication with Evergy was very difficult. It was difficult to report an outage, and sometimes people had to wait a considerable amount of time to talk to a call center representative, despite being fully staffed and ready to go. We apologize for that. It is certainly not our goal to have difficulties communicating with us and reporting an outage in a situation like this. It is something that we are already working on to make sure it doesn't happen again, and it's certainly something we will learn from in the future. But this is truly an unprecedented event today, and we want to make sure that you know that even though it was difficult for us to communicate at times with customers and for you to communicate with us, it certainly did not impact our ability to restore power. And again, we are down to less than 1% or less than 5,000 customers that are out at this time. A couple of other things to note real quick, and then we will take some questions. First of all, according to the Southwest Power Pool, we are not quite out of the woods yet, meaning as we go into tonight and into tomorrow morning, there are still extreme stress on the system. We still have very extreme temperatures, and we've got power plants all across the 17-state region that have been running flat out at their capacity for at least 2 and sometimes longer time periods now. So many of the conditions that were present this morning to create the need to have temporary emergency power reductions are still in place. The Southwest Power Pool is saying that between 8 p.m. tonight and tomorrow morning is the time when we're at most risk for additional outages. At this point, we are in an EEA1 alert status, but that could change as people start getting home from work and more power is being consumed at home. And so we just want to remind people that the request is still out there to conserve energy. You can do that by turning down thermostats, not using lights in rooms that you're not in, reducing the number of appliances that you're using in critical times in the early evening up until about 8 or 9, maybe even 10 o'clock tonight. And just in general being very conscientious about the amount of electricity we use. That will help considerably, and we appreciate folks who are doing that. One other thing, I'd like to give a couple of thank yous. First of all, we've got several large customers, multiple large customers, including Ford Motor Company, Occidental Petroleum, Coffeyville Resources, and several others that are working with Evergy to reduce their power usage and reduce the amount of demand that we would have to get from residential and smaller business customers in the event of an emergency situation like we had earlier today. These companies are doing this at risk of the equipment that they're operating, and we just really would like to thank them for everything that they've been doing over the last several days to help with this situation. And then finally, we'd like to send a big shout out to the men and women who are working outside, more than 3,500 people that are working on lines, distribution and transmission, working on power plants, wind turbines, coal piles. They're working outside in absolutely horrendous conditions over long shifts to make sure that we can keep the lights on, that our power plants are maintained, and whenever there's a problem on our system, that people are climbing poles and getting those fixed. So we really appreciate that. We would not be in the position we are right now were it not for those men and women. And just want to say thank you for that. They're heroes, and we appreciate their efforts. That is a brief thumbnail update of what happened today. And now I'd be happy to take any.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, sorry, I froze for a minute there. So our first question comes from one of our reporters in Wichita. The Southwest Power Pool has said that it asked all regions that rely on their power grid to start conserving energy on February 9th. Is there a reason why we weren't notified about this being a problem last week?
So that's a great question. Appreciate that. So yes, we have been in contact with the Southwest Power Pool as early as February 6th, going into cold weather operations and conservative operations. It's not, and yes, that dialogue has been ongoing about the need to be on top of this. So I would point out that we have been proactively preparing for this for quite some time. One of the things that we've done is we've gone to 24/7 operational shifts at our power plants. We've stopped all projects, all construction projects, anything that isn't designed to maintain the system and maintain power plants for this run. We have asked, we started conservation efforts at all of our facilities, and then on Sunday, which is when we were really informed by the Southwest Power Pool that we were asked to make a public appeal by the Southwest Power Pool. We immediately put out that request for consumers to reduce their usage. So we got the request from the Southwest Power Pool on Sunday, and that's when we put out the request for conservation to a broader area. On Monday morning, we also started working, as I said before, with our larger customers to have them reduce their loads where possible and be able to do it and not damage their equipment. I would also point out that from a power reduction perspective, meaning the temporary emergency power outages that we've implemented on Monday and on Tuesday, we get very, very little notice from the Southwest Power Pool about those outages. You have to remember that this is a 17-state region. Again, it runs from Canada all the way down to the Texas Panhandle. And there are numerous conditions that can cause the need to make a temporary emergency power reduction. It can be a power plant going off somewhere in the Dakotas or in Oklahoma. It can be wind turbines in western Kansas that are not producing as much electricity as needed. It could be a problem with a transmission line somewhere. And in all cases, these are things that, for the most part, are not occurring, from a supply perspective in Evergy service territory, but other places. And so the size of reductions that have to be made and the timing can happen on a moment's notice. And again, that is what has happened over the last 2 days. On Monday and on Tuesday today, we received notice from the Southwest Power Pool in the morning about making emergency reductions, and we implemented those as soon as we got them.
Okay. The next question, why are we experiencing these problems in the extreme cold and not during the extreme heat?
That's a great question. And, normally the top peak conditions for a utility in the Midwest are in the summertime, June, July, or August, usually in the later afternoon and evening. But when you have sustained cold weather like this, several factors form a confluence that can cause these issues. The first is natural gas and the availability of natural gas. Natural gas is used not only to power power plants, but also heat homes in this region, as well as in industrial processes from some of our bigger customers. And so the availability of natural gas as a fuel becomes constrained because everybody is trying to access it at the same time. The second thing is, and that can hit supply of energy, again, in this 17-state region that Southwest Power Pool is operating. The second thing that is true is that cold weather is cumulative. The longer you have extreme cold weather conditions, the harder it becomes for machinery to maintain temperatures that they can operate at. So they use more and more electricity as time goes on. And then I would just point out that on top of all of that, the incidence of failure in super cold weather, and I should note, we're having a weather event that meteorologists say we haven't seen in 85 years across the Midwest of the United States. And really, this is a national issue where we're seeing extreme cold weather. We just simply haven't seen, weather of this extended duration that is this cold for a long time. So that is what's causing the peak and the supply issues in the Southwest Power Pool generally in the wintertime.
Are part of the outages driven by wind turbines, and are the wind turbines producing any energy?
It's another great question, and the quick answer is all of the generation within the Southwest Power Pool has been affected by this weather. As I just mentioned, there are issues with accessing natural gas and fuel oil to run some of our peaker power plants, or the power plants that utility companies turn on to manage very, very high demand in electricity. Coal plants have issues. Some of it has to do with the coal piles, which are stored outside. We get precipitation, and in this case, in this region, we've had freezing rain and then snow. That gets into the coal pile and does two things. One, it becomes very high in moisture content. And the second thing is it becomes almost like concrete. So it's very difficult to get into the power plant to burn and make electricity. In our particular case, we've had people working just about around the clock with bulldozers and other heavy machinery to break up that coal and to get it into the power plants. So you see coal plants having a lot of issues with coal and also with water to cool the power plant. And then again, also, wind, we've had a lot of freezing fog and moisture in the air. This has caused icing on the turbines, and just the very, very cold weather has also caused some of these turbines not to be available. And so as a result, it's not just wind, but it's all types of generation have significant issues when you're talking about the kinds of temperatures we've been having over an extended period of time. I think I said in a press conference earlier today, this morning, in the Evergy service territory, we were reading temperatures of -28 to -22 degrees at many of our power plants. That's the coldest day we've had on record in a long, long time. And it just causes issues with generation generally. It's also true that the Southwest Power Pool has a significant amount of wind on its system, and that wind has not been as readily available over the last 3 or 4 days for a multitude of reasons, including, as I said, icing on the turbines, but also the wind speeds have just been lower. Again, I think today it was about 8 to 10 miles an hour, which is not optimal for producing wind energy on our system.
Our next question is from Chad Lawhorn in Lawrence. I understand that SPP asked for more reduction for a longer period than it did yesterday, but why did that hamper Evergy's ability to simply end a power outage in one neighborhood after an hour and switch the outage to another neighborhood to meet the overall goals?
That's a great question, and I appreciate you asking that. The real reason that outages were a little bit longer today is we were being very, very cautious and very, very conservative in case the Southwest Power Pool needed more reductions. We had an indication from them that there could be considerably more temporary emergency power outages needed than what we called today. And so as we worked on maintaining system stability today, we wanted to be very, very, very cautious so that we didn't get into a situation where we couldn't meet the Southwest Power Pool's needs should they climb higher than what they did. Again, we at the end of the day had about 500 megawatts worth of emergency power reductions that we were able to commit. And that is just the worry that it would go higher than we would have the ready access to is why we were a little more conservative and cautious this morning.
Why, in some cases for these customers, is power still out, and what should they do?
So that's a great question too. Most customers, I can't say for sure all, but most of the customers who were, experienced a temporary emergency power reduction have been restored. Again, we're less than 1% of our total customers have an outage now, and many of those are unrelated to a temporary power reduction. What I would tell folks is that, the grid continues to be operating under extreme duress, meaning that, power plants are still working as hard as they can. There's still ice on all the lines and equipment, and there's just a higher failure rate when you're dealing with extended extreme cold like this. What we would tell folks is we're able to have folks call our call center or call and report an outage through our telephone system. We'd ask folks to go ahead and call either one of those options right now, and we will get your outage assigned as soon as possible. We just ask for a little bit of patience. These are incredibly harsh conditions that our linemen and women are working under, and it just takes a little more time in conditions like this to get everybody restored.
Okay, and one question left. How is this expected to affect customers' prices?
Thanks for that question. Obviously, our number one priority is keeping the power on and to avoid a much longer and a much more protracted or uncontrolled outage, again, like people are seeing in other parts of the country. And so right now, we are focusing on maintaining grid reliability. We're focusing on making sure the power plants run. We're focusing on making sure that our linemen and women are out there responding to outages. It is true that fuel prices are higher. It is true that we are working significantly longer hours and probably some overtime, a lot of overtime to manage the situation. But when it comes to the increased cost as a result of this, what we will ultimately do is work with regulators to talk about what those costs are, and then work very hard to spread those costs out over a longer period of time so that people don't experience a price spike because of this event. Again, fuel costs, maintenance costs, overtime costs, there's a lot of costs that go into managing through an event like this. But that is not our first priority today. Our first priority is to make sure that we keep the lights on and that people can stay safe and warm in their homes. And so that's what we're focused on today.
Another question in from Chad and Lawrence. Can you provide any assurances that future temporary power outages won't last 3 or 4 hours? What should expectations be for the future?
So we would love for temporary emergency power outages to be shorter in duration should they become necessary overnight or tomorrow morning. No, I cannot guarantee that. And the reason I can't guarantee it is because it will largely depend on what the system requirements are and what we hear from Southwest Power Pool. If the situation mirrors what we saw on Monday from about 12:15 through 1:25, where we had our first round of temporary emergency power outages, then our expectation would be it would be closer to the 30 to 60 minute range. If we get a situation where 5 times the amount of energy is required to be taken off our system like we saw today, those power outages unfortunately are going to be a little longer in duration. And it's also important to know that they could be a little longer in duration simply because of some other operating condition that exists within the Southwest Power Pool. We are hopeful that we are through the worst of this, and we are certainly doing everything we can to avoid additional power outages. But at some point, we're at the mercy of both this weather system and all the other dynamics that are going on in the Southwest Power Pool. Again, it could be wind generation not performing as well as the Southwest Power Pool would like. It could be a power plant that goes off somewhere in Oklahoma or South Dakota, and that could get us into another emergency situation. So it's really a minute by minute thing. And again, we're cautiously optimistic that we're through the worst of it, but we're not out of the woods yet, so to speak.
Okay, that appears to be all of the questions we've had come in. I will send a link out to the recording to our participants as soon as it's available. We appreciate everybody's time this afternoon. I know you have a lot going on. Thanks for helping keeping everyone informed.